In this video, I'm going to show you 4 non-hobby products that are indispensable in your hobby arsenal. There are thousands of tools and products out there in the world for the modeling hobby, very possibly millions. From hobby knives and files to specialized scrapers, wet palettes, to like purpose-designed storage solutions. Like, you can always find hobby tools to buy if you're interested in spending some money. The problem is this: usually tools designed specifically for our hobby are priced at a premium. Now, it's not in the scope of this video to figure out why that is, of course. I mean, if you have any ideas, let us know in the comments down below. But just know that tools for our hobby can be expensive. But not all tools have to be specific hobby tools, and they also don't need to have that kind of premium hobby price attached to them. Not only are these tools that I'm about to share with you generally pretty inexpensive, but several of them don't even really have a hobby version, yet they've honestly totally changed my experience in painting and modeling, and I kind of can't imagine not using them going forward. Let's start. This thing that you see here is amazing and has totally changed the way that I paint. It is a silicone fidget popper. It's a fidget toy. It's kind of like popping bubble wrap, over and over, but nigh infinitely reusable. You don't have to worry, you don't waste any plastic or whatever. It's just, you can find them all over the place, but I've put an Amazon link in the description below if you can't. Now, I didn't come up with this idea. My good friend Matt told me about it, and he'd seen it being used this way someplace else online. So I'm not taking any credit for this idea in any way. I'm just trying to spread the word. I prefer dropper bottles for my paints. They're just objectively better than paint pots. Have you ever seen a photo of like a spilled pot of Nuln oil? Of course you have, unless maybe this is your first day on the internet. And if it is, hey, welcome. But it's probably not, so you've seen it. Here's the thing: dropper bottles don't spill. They also don't get that weird dried paint gunk around the rims that makes it so you can't properly close the lid anymore after a while, thereby then completely drying out your paints. Dropper bottles are just better than paint pots in nearly every way. Nearly. That said, I've always preferred my transparent paints, like washes, glazes, contrast, speed paint, whatever, to be in pots. They still have the same problems like spilling and drying out and all that. But it's just so much easier to just dip your brush into the pot and then put it directly onto the model, which is the main way that I use those paints. Now, with opaque paints, you always want to put the paint onto a wet palette to help thin it out. At least I do. And it's easiest to do that via a dropper bottle. And then, once you've got it on the palette, you've thinned it a bit, you then apply it to the model. But putting washes and speed paints on a wet palette is a pretty bad idea. Therefore, you need to find a different place to put your drops of wash and speed paint when squeezing it out of the dropper, if you're using those types of paints. Maybe a piece of scrap plastic, or if you save the caps from water bottles. I've seen that before online. But then after the stuff dries, you now have these little plastic bits all over your hobby desk covered in dried colors. And you can't really just wash them off of what they've dried on. Once the acrylic colors dry, they become waterproof and stick to plastic like crazy, which is frankly their job. That's why you use acrylic paints, right? But do you know what acrylic paint doesn't stick to? Silicone. These fidget poppers are just a series of perfect little paint wells, and you can put a drop or two of washes, speed paints, whatever you've got, into them from your dropper bottles, and then just dip your brush into the colors and then just go to town, right? I'm finding it's also really, really easy to mix specific washes and speed paint recipes and all that kind of stuff in these little reservoirs. If you just got to add a drop of water to thin it, or a drop of medium or something like that, or put 2 colors of wash together, whatever, they don't run all over the place like they do on a scrap of plastic, right? And when the colors dry, you just pop the little dried bits out and you throw them away. You'll see one of these on my hobby table from now on. No more paint pots. Another thing that I use constantly that's not really known as a hobby tool: lab wash bottles. These are specifically designed water bottles that are pretty squishy and squeezable, right? But they also have a built-in 90-degree spigot with a very, very small, kind of very accurate kind of, nozzle. And they have an internal straw thingy that helps it to suck up the water from the bottom of the bottle. You fill them with water, and then you just leave it at your hobby desk. Because of the way that they're built, they don't really evaporate like a cup of water would, or like your paint water usually does over time, and they don't really spill either. If your paint water cup is low when you sit down to start painting, and you don't want to go back upstairs and fill it up in the sink or back into the other room or whatever, just give it a good long squirt of water from the wash bottle. If your wet palette isn't as wet as you would currently like as you open it up to start painting, give it a squirt of water from the wash bottle. It's incredibly convenient to always have a bottle of water ready to go on your hobby table that won't evaporate and also won't spill, and with a precision spigot that'll put water exactly where you want it. And the harder you squeeze, the harder the stream of water will shoot out of there. This is why I always keep one near my airbrush as well. Blasting a tiny little stream of clean water into the gravity feed cup on my airbrush just makes it so much easier to quickly change colors or, clean out the airbrush completely. There's a bunch of times when I just need a bit of clean water for something I'm doing while painting, and having one of these at arm's reach just really, really helps. I got mine on Amazon because you don't see them in stores too frequently. So, again, you can find a link in the description down below. Organizing your paint bottles and all that kind of stuff, it's pretty important. Being able to find the color that you want when you want it, it's key to keeping your painting moving forward and not killing your motivation. Also, misplacing a paint bottle completely and spending a whole bunch of time to find it is the worst. I can tell you this from, definitely from experience. There are tons of hobby product solutions out there to help you solve this problem, right? Some are cheaper than others, and most of them seem to be made out of laser cut MDF, it seems. This is fine, but I wanted something better and cheaper. You know who else has tons and tons of little bottles of color that they need to keep track of? Professional nail salons. Hundreds of bottles of different nail polishes to search through so that your client isn't just sitting there waiting and waiting forever while you try to find that one bottle of unicorn farts, which is a real nail polish color. I looked it up. Anyway, finding colors quickly is key in the nail salon business, and they generally use shelving solutions that are clear acrylic and available on Amazon. I use these tiered ones for the shelving that's near my painting desk. They show up flat packed in a box from Amazon, and then you just sort of put them all together with simple nuts and bolts, which they include in the package. They hold a lot of regular dropper bottles, and also they'll hold Citadel-style paint pots as well if you have those, or pretty much anything that fits. They're very variable in size on each shelf, which is kind of nice. And being clear plastic, I feel like I can see more of the bottles when I'm visually scanning for something specific in comparison to laser cut MDF, which of course is not see-through. Now over by my airbrush, I have a wooden wall instead of cinder blocks, so these kind of flatter wall-mounted nail polish shelves work great. You just hang them with a few screws, and it's real easy. This one can hold a ton of paint bottles as well, but you can get them in all kinds of different sizes for different quantities of paint. I've got the big one here to hold all the airbrush paints and all that kind of stuff. Having your paints easily available and visible just knocks down so many roadblocks that can keep you from enjoying your time painting. Lastly, if you work on tons of different projects at one time, like I do, and Lord knows I certainly do, you'll know that keeping those projects together and easily findable is incredibly important. If you're halfway through a build on a unit or a vehicle or whatever, and then you need to change to a different project due to maybe a deadline, like an upcoming tournament or game event or whatever, or maybe you just need to change tracks to kind of keep your motivation up because you're just not feeling it anymore on this project right now, then when you come back to that project later and you find that some of the parts are missing because they got set somewhere, so you don't lose them and now you can't find them. So what I do is I go to the dollar store and I buy cheap little organizational kind of containers. They've got tons and tons of them depending on your dollar store. These can be as big as shoe boxes sometimes, or as small as sandwich containers, or even smaller. Frequently they'll sell these these kind of meal planning containers in sets of 3 or so. And they have clear lids that just snap on, and then you can easily see what's inside when you're looking for a previously paused project that you saved in one of these kind of cheap containers. Clear sides or lids, whatever, are key. They make searching for that specific project a lot easier. I'd tell you to buy all kinds of different sizes too. I mean, there's a part of you that might be like, they should all match, but don't worry about that, because sometimes you just want to keep a single figure and its parts together for later. You're building a Space Marine and you left his arms and his backpack off, and you'll get back to them later on. So you don't need a big, container for that. Or maybe you need to keep together a vehicle or even a whole unit of models. So you're going to need a bigger box for that. You could even label the containers with a Sharpie if you wanted to. But if you're just planning on keeping the project in a container for a short while, then it's probably not worth it to keep writing on these and then crossing it off and writing on these and that kind of stuff. Maybe write on some masking tape and then stick it to the side if you need to. There's all kinds of non-hobby related tools out there that can actually be quite useful to our hobby related lives. These are just like 4 of my favorites that I wanted to share with you folks. But what did I miss? What things do you use in your hobby that aren't specifically made for building and painting wargaming models? Let us all know in the comments down below. If you like this video and you like tiny, silent fireworks, which are the best kind in my opinion, then hit the like button down below. It really helps the channel. Subscribe if you'd like to see more, and thanks for watching.